This is Radio Paul, and tonight I want to talk to you about no data. Yes, that's right, no data. Ann and Sparrow did a great series of videos tonight where I think that he was outside the DC org and 3 handlers came up to handle him. And this just goes to show that even when the cult of Scientology tries to handle people and they try to speak calmly and quietly, just how ignorant they come across. For example, Ann and Sparrow brought up the fact that Larry Anderson had blown the cult of Scientology. And the primary individual he was speaking to, said, well, I can't really comment on that. I don't have any data. The guy who's in the orientation videos blows the cult, and you have no data on that. What does that say about your organization? What does that say about your organization's ability to communicate pertinent information? That you have no data on a serious incident, such as your guy that's been in the orientation video for 20 years, leaving upset and angry with the organization, but you have no data on it. What are the odds that he will ever get data on that? What are the odds that he will get off his ass and investigate that? Well, it's a possibility, because that's what Anonymous and people like Ann and Sparrow do. They educate people, and it does make a difference. He also had no data on Rex Fowler. One of your members commits murder and then attempts a suicide, and you have no data on that. It's completely blacked out throughout your organization, yet you claim to have the ability to communicate, and you have no data. He also, Ann and Sparrow brought up how David Miscavige has been changing the tech, and there were lectures with LRH and how he has both and he puts them side by side. And yet this guy who has been in Scientology for years has no data on that. What type of Scientologist is he to have no data? I thought a responsible Scientologist bought every version that was ever released of the tech. How could he not know what LRH used to say versus what David Miscavige is now saying LRH said? Not that it really means anything, because it's all a bunch of crap. Well, what that tells me is, like George Orwell's 1984 with New Think, you only think what you're told to think. I believe in 1984, there's a passage referring to how the government cut chocolate rations, say, from 2 ounces down to 1.5 ounces. And how do they handle this? They say, our glorious Big Brother has raised our chocolate rations to 1.5 ounces from 1 ounce. Nobody has any memory that a day before they were getting 2 ounces. Well, I have to say, and I have to hand it to Tony Teresi and everybody else that was standing outside that org today, that you guys do a wonderful job of exposing your own organization. And I also found it interesting when Ann and Sparrow brought up, they said, well, basically, we want the same things, and similar things for Scientology. And they brought out the fact that he talked about deconstructing current management, and they started laughing, saying, well, that's not what we want. Really? You don't want to deconstruct the current management that starved to death. Lisa McPherson had cockroach bites all over her body. You don't want to deconstruct the current management that has been driving out OT8s like driving buffaloes over a cliff in literally hordes. You don't want to deconstruct the management that keeps changing the tech and has you going into a never-ending debt paying for it. You don't want to deconstruct a management that is responsible in the Fort Harrison Hotel for somebody dying in one of the hot tubs and having their skin boiled off, but you want to laugh about it. Isn't that funny? It's not amusing, Tony Teresi. It's not amusing, cult members. Take responsibility for your actions. Get the data. Quit using no data as an excuse. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to, next time I go down to D.C., confront them. I would love to say, how is it possible that you're the most capable people on the planet? You have this great ability to communicate, but you have no data on anything. You have no data on Rex Fowler. You have no data on Lisa McPherson. You have no data on Larry Anderson leaving. You have no data on anything. Yet you're capable and you're able to communicate. Final note. The observation I saw of the food being taken off the truck to prepare for tonight's event was probably enough to feed about 20 people. Pretty much staff. I wonder if they have any data on where the general public is. I wonder if they have any data on why their org is dead and empty. Well, if you listen to the interview, they clearly don't, and they're embarrassed to talk about it. In fact, I believe they even just kind of outright refuse to even address the issue. It's probably because they do have the data. They do know. Ann and Sparrow, thank you again for being out there. Thank you again for fighting the lone fight. I wish I was able to be there with you all the time. I'm not. But I am there with you in spirit, and you do a great job, and you're certainly a shining example of how to confront the cult of Scientology.